Assalamu alaikum. In this video, I am going to start ionic bond. Now, what is ionic bond? The chemical bond that is formed due to the complete transfer of electron or electrons from one atom to the other. When I will explain the example, then you will understand this definition very well. But let me tell you a few points. Ionic bond is formed between metals and non-metals. Means that the bond will be formed between the metal and the non-metal. Cation are formed when an atom loses electron, right? And anion is formed as a result of gain of electron. In this case, what will happen that the metal will always lose electrons. So the one that lose electron will form cation. So metal will result in the formation of cation and non-metal will form anion. It will get a positive charge, cation, right? And the non-metal will always gain electron and it will turn into a negatively charged species. Now we know that positive and negative ion attract each other. They contain opposite charges, so they both will attract each other. So as a result of this attraction, we call it as the force of attraction that is holding them together. Then this is known as ionic bond. Now let me recall again these points. I will recall the definition at the end after explaining the examples. The first point is that ionic bond is formed between metal and non-metal. One will be the metal and the other will be non-metal, and the bond formed between them will be ionic bond. Metal will always lose electron. Cation contain positive charge. Anion is negatively charged. So when the metal will lose its electron, it will convert into positively charged species, and when the non-metal will gain that electron, you can also write it over here minus electron, and here you can write with it plus electron. So when the metal loses its electron, it is converted into positively charged species, and non-metal gained the electron, then it is converted into negatively charged species. As we know that opposite charges attract each other, so there will be a force of attraction between them. Formation of sodium chloride NaCl. How we will start it? We will first write the atomic number of sodium. After writing the atomic number, we will write the electronic configuration of sodium. If you don't know that how you will find the electronic configuration, I have already uploaded the video and the link is in the description below. So this is the electronic configuration of sodium. Now let us fill them in the shells. We know that the K shell holds 2 electrons. So these 2 electrons will be present in the first shell, K shell, which will hold 2 electrons. The second shell is L shell. It can hold 8 electrons. So the next 8 electrons will be present in the L shell. 2 electrons of 2s2 and 6 electrons of 2p6. So 8 electrons will be present in the L shell. Now how many electrons are left? Only 1. So we will fill this 1 electron in the next shell, that is M, which will hold here 1 electron. We have sodium. So 2 sodium, 2, 8 and 1. 2 of K shell, 8 of L shell and 1 of M shell. Now this will lose its 1 electron and it will convert into a cation, because with the loss of electron, cation is formed and 1 electron is lost. So it will be left with 2 and 8. 2, 8 and 1 electron will be lost by sodium. Now in the formation of these bonds, remember that you have to complete the octet or duplet. The atom should attain the noble gas electronic configuration. Noble gas electronic configuration means that it should hold either 2 electrons in its outermost shell or 8 electrons. Now how sodium will get 8 electrons in its outermost shell? It will lose 1 electron. It will have 8 electrons in its outermost shell. According to the octet, the atom should hold 8 electrons in its valence shell, and according to the duplet, the atom holds 2 electrons in its valence shell. So in this case, when sodium lost its 1 electron, it attained the noble gas electronic configuration. It is having 8 electrons in its valence shell. Now let us go towards the chlorine. I will write the atomic number of chlorine, that is 17. Now we will write the electronic configuration of chlorine. So the electronic configuration of chlorine is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2 and 3p5. Now how we will fill them in the shell? We know that the first shell accommodate 2 electrons. So again the first 2 electrons will go in the K shell. L shell hold 8 electrons. So these 8 electrons will go in the L shell. How many electrons we are left with? 7 electrons. So these 7 electrons will be filled in the M shell. In order to attain the noble gas electronic configuration, an atom should have 8 electrons according to the octet rule or 2 electrons according to the duplet rule. The duplet rule only applies to the hydrogen, lithium, helium. For others we apply the octet rule. So in this case, see over here, this chlorine is having 7 electrons in its outermost shell. So if it gain 1 electron, it will have 8 electrons and it will also get the noble gas electronic configuration. So the 1 electron that was lost by the sodium, see over here, the sodium lost its 1 electron, right? Now this 1 electron will be gained by the chlorine. So in this case, what will happen, that chlorine will get 8 electrons in its valence shell. It was Na positive. Here this is Cl negative. We know that opposite charges attract each other. The opposite charges attracted each other. As a result, a force of attraction was created between them. That force of attraction hold them together, and as a result of this attraction, ionic bond is formed between metal and non-metal. Here we know that the first shell is K shell. The second one is L shell. And the third is M shell. I already told you that how many electrons will be present in each shell. There will be 2 electrons in the K shell. There will be 8 electrons in the L shell. Now we will go towards the M shell and we know it has only 1 electron. Now we will go towards the chlorine. We know that the first shell hold 2 electrons. We will represent the electrons of one atom by X and the electron of the other by dots. You can represent this one with dot and this one with X as well. This is for our own convenience. Now in the first shell, the Cl is holding 2 electrons. In the second shell, it is holding 8 electrons. In the third shell, it is holding 7 electrons. So, sodium after losing 1 electron will attain the noble gas electronic configuration, and chlorine after gaining the electron will attain the noble gas electronic configuration. See over here, the sodium lost its 1 electron and now it is having 8 electrons in its valence shell, and after accepting the 1 electron of the sodium, the chlorine is also having 8 electrons in its outermost shell. Now see that the sodium has lost its 1 electron, so it will get a positive charge. Now the cation and anion will attract each other, and as a result a bond will be formed, and that bond will be ionic bond. Now let us see the definition. Here they say the chemical bond that is formed due to complete transfer of electron from one atom to the other. See over here, the transfer of electron is taking place, and after the transfer, a bond is formed between them. So the chemical bond that is formed due to the complete transfer of electron from one atom to the other. I hope now you understood the definition. Now the next example of ionic bond is the formation of calcium chloride. What is the atomic number of calcium? It is 20. And let us write the electronic configuration for calcium. This is the electronic configuration of calcium. We will fill the electron in the shell. The first shell will hold 2 electrons. The second will hold 8 electrons. The third will also hold 8 electrons. Now let us see how many are left. 2 electrons in the K shell, the next 8 in the L shell, next 8 in the M shell. And how many electrons are left in the N shell? 2 electrons are left in the N shell. The reaction for this will be calcium 2, 8, 8 and 2. Now to attain the noble gas electronic configuration, calcium has to lose these 2 electrons. As it is losing 2 electrons, so we will write +2. Sodium lost 1 electron, so we only wrote sodium positive. Calcium is losing 2 electrons, so we will write +2. Now 2 8 and 8. It has lost 2 electrons. Now let us go towards the chlorine. Now we know that the atomic number of chlorine is 17. First of all, we will write the electronic configuration. So this will be electronic configuration of chlorine. Let us fill them in the shells. The first 2 electrons will be in the K shell. The next 8 will be in the L shell. 7 electrons are left, so these 7 electrons will be present in the M shell. Cl, 2, 8 and 7. Here it is 7. So if this chlorine will gain 1 electron, it will attain the noble gas electronic configuration. So now it will accept an electron. Calcium donated 2 electrons, right? Chlorine will here accept 1 electron and it will convert into a negatively charged species. And here it will be 2, 8 and 8. There will be 2 chlorines that will react with calcium. Means that this is one chlorine that accepted an electron. There will be another chlorine that will accept the electron and convert into the negatively charged species. So we can say that 1 Ca plus 2 and 2 Cl negative will result in the formation of calcium chloride. The formula of calcium chloride is CaCl2. So there are 2 chlorines present. Calcium lost 2 electrons. 1 electron is accepted by 1 chlorine and the second electron is accepted by the second chlorine. Let us see the diagrammatic representation of this reaction. Now see over here, in the first shell of calcium there were 2 electrons. In the second shell and the third there were 8 electrons, and in the third shell there were 2 electrons that were present. Let us fill the electrons in the shell of chlorine. In the first shell there were 2 electrons, in the second there were 8 electrons, and in the third there were 7 electrons present. Now see, in this case what will happen, that calcium will lose its 1 electron and it will lose its second electron. Now see, there were 4 shells and here there will be 3 shells left. In the first there will be 2 electrons and second and third there will be 8 electrons. Note one thing, that the size of the cation decreases because it is losing the electrons of its valence shell, so its size will be decreased. Now let us fill the electrons. Now see over here, calcium has lost its 2 electrons and it will gain plus 2 charge, and the chlorine will become chloride ion and it will gain the negative charges. You can write it in this way, that plus 2 above the calcium and negative charges above the chloride ions. The bond that is formed in this case is the ionic bond. Why on ionic bond? Because ionic bond is the bond that is formed by the complete transfer of electrons from one atom to the other. In the definition I told you it will be electron or electrons. In the case of sodium there was 1 electron that was transferred, and in case of calcium chloride there are 2 electrons that are transferred. Now let me briefly tell you about the formation of aluminium chloride. When you will write the atomic number and electronic configuration, then you will get to know that the valence shell of aluminium is holding 3 electrons. When aluminium will lose its 3 electrons, it will convert into a cation Al plus 3. As it is losing 3 electrons, so it will donate 3 electrons to the chlorine. 1 electron to each chlorine. The way in the previous example, the calcium was donating 1 electron to one chlorine and 1 electron to the other chlorine. The chlorine will convert into chloride ions, and as positive and negative charges will then attract each other and a force of attraction will be formed between them. As a result, bond will be formed between them. So complete transfer of electron will take place from aluminium to the chlorine to gain the noble gas electronic configuration. I hope you all understood this topic, and if you have any question then let me know in the comments below.